Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the House and the people for this opportunity to respond to the government's proposed 2016 budget. I will speak on two subheadings. One on the area of government department or portfolio that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has assigned to me as spokesperson, and that area is defence. Two, a short brief or history on why government levies taxes, duties and charges, because sometimes we need to remind ourselves of the basics. On the first issue, we note from the Minister's budget speech that there was an increase in funds to the peacekeeping missions by $6 million. In 2015, the budget was about $72 million, and in 2016, it's about $78 million. This is on top of another $103 million that's allocated to the military forces proper for 2016. That is a total, Madam Speaker, of about $181 million for 2016 directly to the military. We have not included indirect monies to them from the budget. It's a legitimate question for taxpayers to ask, Madam Speaker, why? Why so much money to one government department and one that can't really produce anything towards the GDP? It's not a good investment, Madam Speaker. And it's simple logic to ask these questions. If we, the people of Fiji, are contributing about $100 to $200 million a year into a government department or product, it's only simple logic that we ask, what are they, the military, producing? What returns are they giving to Fiji to justify the big investments in that government department? This is nothing personal, Madam Speaker, to anyone. They are legitimate questions that taxpayers who are burdened by direct and indirect taxes through very high food prices, the high cost of living, and high unemployment rates, they can, should, and do legitimately ask these questions about this big expenditure ticket. From the opposition budget workshop last week, Madam Speaker, I obtained some useful figures on this subheading. The total amount to be spent on the military is about 5% of GDP. Why, Madam Speaker? Let's look into what the military has given Fiji in return for the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that this poor country and its poor taxpayers have been made to cough up to this government department. Madam Speaker, they have given us 30 years of coups, the coup culture, which has destroyed and continues to destroy institutions in this country that are required to build and enrich this country. The rule of law, parliament, the media, the civil service, USP, FNPF, sugar, tourism. To be inclusive, Madam Speaker, let me turn it around to ask the military these questions. Is it determined to continue their last 30 years by doing bad things and risk killing the golden goose that lays the golden eggs for them? The national economy and the direct and indirect taxpayers of Fiji. That includes the foreign investors who look for strong institutions first and foremost before they invest money in an economy. What bad things do I refer to, Madam Speaker? Very recently, employing and harboring fugitives, those charged with serious assault and torture offenses, interfering in the work of the police force, as stated by the now former Commissioner of Police last week. That expatriate commissioner, Madam Speaker, has now returned overseas to tell the world and foreign investors what fundamentals we have in Fiji for foreign investment. Unfortunately, local investors also listen in to those views. Why are investors important, Madam Speaker? They're important for economic growth. We need them to employ our people, their capital.
Point of order.
The matter is before the courts regarding those police officers. The matter is outside the budget speech. The honourable member is now reiterating what her colleague was reiterating, and where I raised the point of order, that the matters should be restricted to the budget speech. She has used the guise of the military and police, taken it further, stressed it, and now going to arena which the courts are dealing with. It's a point of order, Professor. It's take precedence on all other matters.
Thank you.
What I request, Madam Speaker, there be a strict ruling, because they can't use the guise of the budget speech to explain into matters that are before the courts. It's undermining a separate judicial department.
Thank you. But I think the honourable member was referring to the budget that was being allocated to the police and the military. and not really on the issue that is before the courts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Please continue.
The expected, why are investors important? They're important for economic growth. We need them to employ our people. Their capital and human resource investments will mean more money for our schools and hospitals. We need them to grow FNPF rather than deplete it for government short-term parties. Madam Speaker, I'm very saddened every time I drive past the CWM hospital, or on the rare occasion visit a relative in there. It's really sad, Madam, the state of the hospital. And the stories we hear from the professionals there about their plight. It's sad for the people of Fiji, the health professionals who complain about unreasonably long hours and long overdue overtime pay, the lack of posts for professionals to aspire to and get paid for. All this contributes to the brain drain, Madam Speaker. Professionals remain in the same post and pay for very many years in substandard working conditions. It's no wonder they reach their level of tolerance, Madam Speaker, resign and migrate, and we lose them. We even do things that wealthy countries won't dream of doing, like subsidizing the shares of wealthy private shareholders in Qantas, who are big shareholders in Fiji Airways, by providing $80 million investment for a new route to Singapore without any details of whether Qantas shareholders, who will benefit greatly from any profits, will contribute a commensurate amount of investment. If not, Madam Speaker, why not? Is it because we destroyed our relations with Qantas shareholders? I'm sure that $18 million would have done wonders in an upgrade for CWM Hospital for the benefit of those who will pay the $18 million. It's a vicious cycle, Madam Speaker, what bad governance lands us with. And we have to ask ourselves the legitimate questions about why various investments are made and why we invest hundreds of millions of dollars into a government department that acts with impunity to bite and, in fact, torture the hands that feed it. On the issue of the peacekeeping missions, Madam Speaker, some figures are 2013, about $14 million was remitted to Fijian government from the UN for the peacekeeping service and mission. In return, the Fijian government spent about $69 million for the same ticket item. 2014, $22 million was given for the peacekeeping mission, and in return, the Fijian government spent $72 million. 2015, it's about $9 million, with the Fijian government giving $78 million for that head. As an expert mentioned at the opposition budget workshop last week, why are we pouring hundreds of millions of dollars in military missions overseas in conflicts that have nothing to do with us, while our hospitals and health professionals crave for the bare minimum? And what do we get in return from the military for that generosity? We get the coup culture, the trashing of the foundation of the economy. We get torture, we get thuggery. And I ask the military, Madam Speaker, please give us something different. Please think critically of what you have done and continue to do. Think of what you are giving back to the people, the taxpayers of Fiji, and have some humility and shame about what you're giving Fiji in return for the generosity that the people and the Fijians have given you. A suggestion for a solution, Madam Speaker, and provided that the Constitution and other laws allow, I ask the government to consider including the military and the police in the upcoming civil service reform. I move on to the second subheading, Madam Speaker. I wanted to speak really a brief on why governments levy taxes, duties, and charges in the first place, and that from history is levied by rulers, and now includes elected governments, in order to provide services for those who pay for them, for things that benefit those who pay, for things that will help the government grow the economy and acquire more funds through employment and investments, so that citizens can get better public services, better schools and hospitals. In contrast, taxes, levies, and charges are not levied to destroy the economic foundations, weaken and destroy institutions that attract investors, or punish, weaken, and destroy sectors of the economy. Madam Speaker, just yesterday, an independent member of the Constitutional Officers Commission, Mr. Richard Naidu, resigned, citing bad governance and bad practice issues for his reasons for resigning. He acts for many investors. What messages does that send out to investors? They are certainly not levied, Madam Speaker, taxes and charges and duties to pour hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to fund a government department that destroys the foundations of the economy. And another foundation of that, Madam Speaker, is this House. And I'm saddened that because we have cut time down to 1 week, that members opposite have limited themselves to 5 minutes. They should have been given 20 minutes. We want to hear from them. That's why the people of Fiji elected them. Even though we disagree with
Please
their views,
continue the speech. That decision was made by Business Committee and agreed to by both whips.
I'm speaking on governance issues, Madam Speaker, which is legitimate and foundation of the economy.
Please focus on the budget.
Foundations of the economy, and to torture and the abuse the human rights of the people who pay their salaries, Madam Speaker. Basically, that is what it is. We are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars to fund a government department that destroys the foundations of the economy and tortures and abuses the human rights of the people who pay their salaries. And I end on that note, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, honourable members. We will not have time to have the next